I am tired. I'm very tired. I've been on YouTube for 12 long years, and I've been earning income online since the early 2000s, and I'm sick of side hustling. I'm sick of feeling like I'm in a constant meat grinder needing to produce. And here's the deal. We are not machines. We are humans. So if you're feeling as tired as I am and you understand what I'm talking about, I've discovered a way out. A way to finally be able to offload some of this constant need to produce and put it where it should be, onto an actual machine. And by that, I mean AI automation. I have discovered AI automation, and if you can tell from my voice, I am very excited about it because it's going to take all of that and put it onto AI, to automation software, which I'm going to show you. And it's essential as we move into the world of people's jobs being taken away by AI or companies automating. They've been doing this, what I'm showing you, for years and getting more and more efficient so that fewer and fewer humans are needed in industry. But that's all right because let's be honest, it's not all right. However, it's what we have. So how do you fight back? How can you survive? Well, this is a way. Let me show you. On September 13th, I discovered a new way of making podcasts. And by that evening, I was already working on a new project called Snippets. It's a podcast that's almost completely automated. The hosts talk about books like New York Times bestsellers to classics. And I launched it, but I had a real life stop date because a very close family member was going into surgery. And so I needed to get this entire podcast. I wanted to have 30 episodes for all of October so I could focus completely on taking care of my family member and not have any stress. That's one of the problems I've had with content creation. You have to produce, but life happens. People get sick. You need to go to the hospital. You take a vacation. You're tired, whatever, because we're humans. But now I have a complete month of episodes for our Lit Snippets podcast. And the one thing I want to take you to take from this, when I started this on September 13th, I had done only one automation before, about a year before with make.com. But besides that, I had no idea how to do what I did. And I used ChatGPT to help me. This is Lit Snippets. It's a super fun little blog that has a new book, deep dive, every day. This was so much fun to put together. The about page here just shows two hosts here, two host chairs, and all of the text that you see was generated. Ho hum, that's not a big deal. We can all generate text now. But the key is that this was all generated from text that makes this blog, makes this podcast seem and sound really natural. And I'm going to teach you all my tricks for that. Part of that was prompting. But instead of just having it do generic blogs, well, I'll just show you. Today, the day I'm recording this, October 15th, Me Talk Pretty One Day was the book we focused on today. This is a book by David Sedaris, and this image is generated, which would be obvious after a glance or two. But the thing is, though I've automated this podcast, I've not automated the entire thing. I've automated the tedium. The part that belongs to the machine, I've given to the machine. So the part that I enjoy, which is generating these images and generating the podcast and listening to that, choosing the books, the fun parts, the creative parts, the parts that make me feel alive as a human remain. And the automation and tedium is gone. This is what a podcast sounds like.
All right, so get ready to laugh because today we are diving deep into the world of David Sedaris. And specifically, we are exploring his essay collection, Me Talk Pretty One Day. And we're not just going to skim the surface. We want to find those deeper insights hiding behind those hilarious stories.
Yeah, it's really amazing what Sedaris can do. I mean, he takes those moments, those awkward, cringeworthy moments we all have, the things we would never admit out loud, and he turns them into art.
Yeah, he gives us permission to laugh at ourselves, you know?
We could all use some permission to laugh at ourselves. And I needed to laugh at myself several times as I went through this process because, let me tell you, there were some moments where I had some head-banging moments for sure. So right here, this is the blog service I'm using is called Ghost. And I chose it as well as the transistor.fm podcast service, which I'll show you later. I chose them both, first of all, because they had APIs that I could connect to. Because I wanted the whole process of building this podcast to be started from within ChatGPT. I'll explain that to you in a minute. This is what the podcast looks like. The highlights we loved. All of this is written by AI. This is a quote that is pulled out. This is all part of the automation. And this quote is pulled out here from the actual podcast that you were just listening to. And I spent a great deal of time getting this text. This text is not just, hey, ChatGPT, write me a blog about X, but it is pulled from all of the data from both the book itself, as well as the keywords, as well as the viewer we're looking for. We're looking for people who want quick book breakdowns. Every episode is no longer than 10 minutes or so. And who wanted something daily to appear in their email to let them know, is this book a great book or not? So let's start this whole process from the beginning and head on over to ChatGPT. The process begins with this screen here. This is the Pod Upload GPT that I've created. This is what allows ChatGPT to talk to the automation. Here, under Edit GPT, is the secret. APIs this GPT can use. This is where the power of GPTs comes into play. You can see here that I'm using n8n. And basically what allows ChatGPT to use the internet, to connect outside to the outside world, is through an API. And what defines what can happen in that API call is what's called a schema right here. I've already done a video on how APIs work and how you can connect your GPT to the outside world. But for now, just know that this is not something you need to write. If this field is empty when you first create an action, you'll see a little button down here that says Get Help from Actions GPT down here in the bottom right. And that is what will write your schema for you. Once I've chosen a book and I've given the data that I want to send to ChatGPT, it creates the automation. So let's go take a look at it. This is n8n. It's an app like Zapier or Make.com, but I chose it over Zapier or Make.com for a couple of really important reasons, including one really big reason that you're going to want to know about at the end of this video. This reason is a game changer. And no one is really talking about it. So I can't wait to tell you about that. But for right now, let's focus on how this works. You might look at this and go, oh, there is no way I can do this. Absolutely not. Lady, are you crazy? But I would have thought that too when I first started. The way it works is you just basically go step by step. So let's look at this step by step. Now, if you're thinking, I'm not going to make a podcast, so what good is this to me? That's the thing about automation. You can automate anything that has an API. You can set up ChatGPT right now to, for example, check your Gmail account, send you new Gmail messages, and help you write an email and then send a message back to that person. Send a draft to your email account. You can do that right now. You can have ChatGPT check your calendar and tell you what's going on in your calendar. Anything that can be connected to is through an API you can connect to. Not only that, there are a lot of nodes, which I will show you in a little bit. These little sections here, these little boxes, I'm going to zoom in. Each of these are a node. Now, in Zapier, they're called zaps, and I think in make.com, they're all called steps. But in all automation tools, they're basically the same thing. All that automation is doing is taking data and removing you from the process of having to update it. For example, I wanted to have ChatGPT talk to this automation through what's called a webhook. A webhook is the secret. That schema I just showed you, when it actually sends the call, arrives here at a webhook. Every automation service has a webhook. So you do not have to be locked into n8n, but there's a couple of reasons why you might choose it the way I did. Now, what you might normally do is when you have a new book and you want to keep a nice spreadsheet of all the books that your podcast has done, so you know what books you've done. You don't repeat a book, for example. You can keep a nice little spreadsheet like this one, but you'd have to sit there and type that in. The automation removes you from the loop and automatically updates that sheet. Next, I wanted to have the episode always be in order, for example. So rather than me, after a couple of weeks, sitting down and going, okay, what episode are we on? And what date did it go live? Now, let me make sure I get the next date. All of that. My whole goal was to remove me and my human fallacies and ability to make mistakes out of the loop. So this will fetch the last episode, and this is one of the most important nodes that you would work with in any automation software. This is a HTTP node. You can see from this little cloud area here. And this is reason number one as to why I chose n8n. With every node, it takes you directly to the documents. So you might be wondering, well, how do I get started? Well, this is how I got started. I basically said, I want to build out a podcast that does everything from updating a spreadsheet and then generating all of the title, the metadata, the description, everything you just saw. But then I want you to upload that to transistor.fm, and then I want you to upload it to the blog, and then I want you to upload an image. And so I just described what I wanted, and then we just started at the first step, the webhook step. I opened up the help document, and I gave it to ChatGPT. Now, you don't even really need to do that for most of these nodes because ChatGPT knows well what a HTTP request node is, but and it knows how to write that out. But for you to help understand, see, what I'm really encouraging you to do is to use this help documentation to help you learn how it works so that you feel more confident as you go along. I'm going to go back over here, and this will calculate the next episode and date. And I think what I'm going to do is pull up an execution that already ran so I can show you what the data looks like. The second reason why I chose Ghost was because of its user interface. Trust me, you're going to be spending a lot of time looking at this when you first set it up, because that's what passive income or automation basically means, is you front load all of the work by building out the automation. But then after that, once it's built, you just sit back and let it run. But at first, again, it does take a little bit of time, especially if you are a beginner. Now, what I hope to do is to find out how many of you are interested in having me teach you this, so you don't have to suffer, because what I had to get through this was ChatGPT, Google search, and the n8n forums. And there were some times where I spent a lot of time looking for a particular piece of information, especially with one node I'll share with you later on, down towards the end of this automation, that really I almost gave up. And it was darkest before the dawn, absolutely, because I got really stuck. But I've already been through it, so now I want to teach you. First of all, over here with episode and date, let's open this up. This is fetching the last scheduled episode from Transistor. Here is why I firmly agree, or let me say that again. I firmly believe that low-code tools like n8n are much better than no-code tools or extremely low-code tools like Zapier and Make.com, and this is why. Let's say in your automation, like I did, that I have pulled up a number, an episode, and the next date it's published at. And I want to programmatically, that's the key. We don't want to do this by hand. I don't want to sit there and go, okay, what episode? As I've said before, I want this to be done by the automation programmatically. But if you can't find a node like that in Zapier, then you're basically out of luck. But the code node in n8n allows you to go to ChatGPT and say, hey, can you write me some JavaScript code that it can execute that does the following information to these variables? I then just take a screenshot of this, I give it to ChatGPT, and it says, sure, no problem. Here you go. And not only that, over time, you start to learn a little bit about what this code does and means. So that over time, expressions like this, I can actually read this expression now. I can even write it. That was absolutely not possible. And when I first looked at this expression, it looked like Greek to me. I had no idea. But over time, ChatGPT taught me. I got curious and I just said, what does each section of this mean? So there were several times where I had some problems, really serious show-stopping problems with this section right here. And what I learned was how to change this section so that it worked. And that I learned that this could be item, or it could also be first as well too, which solved a lot of the problems that I had. I still don't, if anyone from n8n is watching this, I still have no idea why sometimes item works and first works, but I kept getting an error. And I couldn't find the answer until I was able to go through the forums, and between that and ChatGPT, I was able to work that out. And you're going to run into those problems as well too. But here's the thing. Don't give up. Just don't give up. Just start with, I took off a huge amount to chew, I will admit, for my third only automation of my entire life. But you can start with something small like, hey, ChatGPT, can you get my emails for me? That's a 3-step automation. The webhook that makes the request to Gmail, the Gmail node that gives you the information, and the webhook reply that sends it back to ChatGPT. That's it. So start small if you are feeling overwhelmed and are not insane like I am. Moving on with this transcript here. This whole process basically pulls a transcript out of Dropbox and creates some share links and then converts that to text. It's pretty simple. And there were several nodes that even though I did look through all the nodes, I didn't find out about them until maybe halfway or 3/4 of the way through this process. And I went, oh, it would have been really good to know that node. Now, n8n is great with showing you all the nodes. Like I said, its help documentation is excellent. I tried various other automation services in trying to figure out what would work best for this. I tried ActivePieces, this is the automation that I used to upload the first 30 episodes to the podcast. And after I'd done that, and it worked well, but I also had some problems with its UI, to be honest. And I wasn't feeling it. And also I found that there are forums where you go and get to help. Frequently, no one would reply. When I went and looked for help, somebody else would be asking the same question and there was no replies. So that really scared me off. Whereas the n8n service works. There's people always, as well as someone from n8n themselves, answering in a fairly short period of time. And always people got an answer. I didn't see anything where people didn't get answered or got ignored the way I saw on ActivePieces. Both ActivePieces and n8n interested me for one important reason, and that is that they can be self-hosted. That means that you can have as many workflows, as many automations as you want that can fit on a server, would be hundreds and hundreds, maybe even thousands. I have no idea. I have seen on Reddit people who have way more automations than I'd ever come up with, self-hosting it for $5 a month. So if you are willing to learn about self-hosting, I will point a video out to you by a man named Ben, who has been doing a lot of great content about n8n, and I'll drop that down in the description. So this instance, though, that I'm using, I'm actually paying the $20 a month. n8n has a $14-day trial. So you can try it out and see how it works for you. So that's the next reason why I used n8n. The first reason was the user interface, and the next reason was the cost and the potential cost savings. The third reason was with both Make.com and Zapier. They charge you based upon the nodes, steps, or zaps, or whatever they're calling it. In other words, whenever you run this workflow, every time you go through this step, this step, this step, this step, et cetera, that's going to cost you. That's they have a certain number that you get every month. But with n8n, it's just one workflow. Every time I run this, that counts for one. That's it. I could add 100 more nodes to this. It still counts for one. That is a huge difference and really takes down the price, because with some of these automation tools, and Zapier, I'm looking at you, they become incredibly expensive if you want to start really automating your whole entire side hustle and taking all of that off your plate. And n8n does not have that problem. And it also has really good documentation on self-hosting. Along with the video that I'm going to point you to, self-hosting becomes easy. And that is what I'm going to do next as my trial here comes up. And I just wanted to move here and get going on it and then work on self-hosting later, because it's something I'm going to need to learn to do. Again, ChatGPT. This whole section here actually takes the entire, all of the metadata. And I'm just going to give you an example of how I do this. So I don't just say, give me some titles. In general, what I do is I give it a list of keywords. Let's open this up. These expressions pull in data from earlier in the workflow, because all workflows are just data moving through the workflow, adding data in, changing it, and exporting it, or whatever you're doing with it. So in this case, I'm bringing in the title, which has here. I'm bringing in the keywords here, and I'm asking it to output the title with the keyword phrase. So I want every episode to have keywords in it, basically, like this Me Talk Pretty One Day, brief but deep book dive. And since I'm looking for a brief book podcast or, quick book podcast, these are some of the keywords that we have. Rapid book breakdowns, for example. Daily literature summaries for busy readers is another keyword. Concise book overviews podcast is another keyword. So having that done by the AI means I do not have to sit there, and I have some very dark memories of having to do this after many years on YouTube, of trying to figure out how to pepper my YouTube description with SEO optimized keywords that are long tail keyword phrases. Those days are over. They are done. Now that's what AI does for us. Anyway, I have the title here, and it gives us 10 options. Now you would think, okay, well, that's great. Just have it choose one of those options. But what I do, and this is one of the things I love about n8n, is how you can just move through your flow step by step. Here, it shows the output. And this one is where I asked it to take those previous titles and then think out loud and review them and assign them a rating, stating its reasons why. And so, 7.0, 8.5, whatever that is. And here we have 8.0 rating, 7.5 rating. And from that, it greatly increases the quality. And I can trust it to give me a great title every time just with this method. In this case, it came up with Counting Miracles, Rapid Insights for Readers on the Go. Sounds great. And then at this point, I just ask it to output the title, and that's the final process. So each of these nodes, I was able to break down each of these. Now, you might also be wondering, well, shoot, how much does that cost to make all of those API calls to OpenAI? Not very much at all. To run this whole thing costs I'm guessing somewhere around 10, 15 cents. And the reason I have to guess is because I haven't looked in a while when running just a single time. But when testing, the most I spent in a day was 97 cents to move this through. So it is extremely inexpensive. Over here, it just generates some of the URLs, and this is the process of uploading it to Transistor. On this stage, I go back and update the information in the spreadsheet and with more additional information over here. And you can see that this situation, all of this here is new. The first 30 episodes, I didn't think of this, but after I did those first 30, I was like, you know what? I want a spreadsheet that has like the title, the episode, and the description, because I can use this information. If it's in a spreadsheet, it can be used later on. So the spreadsheet is updated. It uploads to Transistor, and then here comes the image processing. Again, for those of you who are really familiar with n8n, you might be wondering why I've called Dropbox like 17 times. And that's because I literally don't know what I'm doing, and I'm a beginner. So I could not figure out how to keep the data throughout the flow. I ran into a problem here. So, which I won't go into too much detail on, but that was the best way I could figure out how to get around it, to be honest. The blog post preparation here is where it sends to Ghost. And this right here is where I almost gave up. Generating what's called a JWT token, something that no other API I've used needs this. This token creates, because Ghost gives you, as everyone else does, an API key. Except it's not good enough. They can't stop there. Everyone else is happy with that, but not Ghost. They require you to do a token. And this token is complete gobbledygook. And not only that, it expires every 5 minutes. And it has to. You can't change that. This code to create this, it took forever. It was very, very difficult to do. I kept asking ChatGPT to do it, and it was like, absolutely, I got this. And it just would not work. And also, if anyone from Ghost is ever watching this, man, the way that you return a response that has failed, just said token failed. It just wouldn't tell me why. So I literally had to just keep guessing and guessing and trying. And it got pretty darkest before the dawn there. And I really did almost give up there. But I eventually did find some code that worked in an old forum post from 2002. Thank you, Internet Stranger. And I gave it to Claude, and it was able to give me this. Now, you might be wondering why I didn't give it the code to ChatGPT. Well, let's talk about the differences between why you want to use not just one, not just two, but 3 different AIs throughout this process. ChatGPT is amazing if you need someone who's going to get down and dirty and teach you something. It is by far the smartest model out there right now. GPT-4o, and particularly now that we have access to GPT-O Preview and Mini, those are very good with reasoning tasks. When I got really stuck with that code block, I went to O1 Preview. However, right now, as of this recording, you can only use this 50 times a week, if I'm not mistaken, and O1 Mini is 50 times a day. So you're going to run out of those pretty quickly, but it did get me stuck out of some pretty dark corners there. But Claude is amazing with code. I don't pay for Claude, as you can see here, as I make this bigger, but you can see that right here is when I was asking for information about the date in order to do that code that I showed you earlier that automatically generated the next date. For that one, I needed to get some backup help from Claude. But there's one more player here, and that is Google Gemini. So for this part of the video, I want to give you a really fun example. This brings me to the last reason as to why n8n is the best, by far the best tool out there, especially if you're going to work with an AI to help you build your workflows. And that's because of this one little trick. As I've said to you before, this is a node. I'm going to select this node. Now, I'm going to copy this node, and I'm going to paste it right here. I'm going to click right here so it'll show up. Wherever you click is where it will show up. That's great. We now have a copy of that node. And if we open it up, it's exactly the same as the previous node. It just has a 1 here to distinguish it. It also has the same note as in the previous node. But there's one more cool thing that you can do. I'm going to go over here, and in ChatGPT, I'm just going to click Control V for paste. And what do you see there? I see this is JSON. JSON object, a JSON object. This is what a node is. But the make.com, but Zapier, they don't allow you to be able to literally copy and paste a node right into ChatGPT and ask it to work with you on exactly the node. But here's the cool thing. If you could give this node to ChatGPT, it can actually write the node for you. So you can say, here is a node, and this is exactly what I did towards the end of this process, is the note that I just showed you and all the names. And even as we scroll out here, all of the organization, the names, the notes, every one of these nodes has a note that explains what it does. These sections, I did not write that. Let's find out how many nodes this automation has. I've taken the entirety of that workflow that you've just seen, and I've dropped it here into Google Gemini. It's a lot of tokens. In fact, it's about 40,000 tokens. Let's scroll all the way down to here. I asked Google Gemini to tell me every single node in this workflow, and it can do that. This node, it shows the sticky note, the initialization right here. That is this over here. So it shows the sticky note. It shows what the first grouping is called, and it groups them together. Episode number and date is grouped together. Transcript processing, everything that you've already seen, this is it in text form, which means that Google, Gemini, or any other model with a larger token, or even ChatGPT for smaller, shorter workflows, most of those workflows are not going to be as long as mine are, our ChatGPT can actually write your workflow for you. And that's the next project that I'm working on. So I'm wondering, let's ask, how many nodes in total, not counting the sticky notes? Let's just see. I think that it is around 50. 61 nodes. Oh my goodness. I have a feeling that it may also, no, it says it's not counting the stickies. Large language models are not good at counting, so I would take that with a grain of salt. However, it is a lot of nodes. And so if you get stuck on your building process, just take your entire workflow, put it into Google Gemini, and ask it to help you through if its token size is too large for ChatGPT. I started with ChatGPT doing the earlier nodes, and then once the workflow got so large, I just moved it right over to Google Gemini, and it's the one that helped group the nodes towards the end. So I'll never bother writing titles and notes to make the workflow understandable. That's the job of machines. I mentioned to you that I've got a couple of dreams here. First of all, I'm extremely excited about AI automation and the fact that you can just export an entire workflow like I've just shown you is amazing. But this is the beginning of my journey with ChatGPT because, for example, this entire video, I'm going backwards in the slides here, I created as a slideshow, including, as you can see there, animated icons. This whole slideshow and the video I used to keep me on track and move through, this was created with ChatGPT with a workflow automation in n8n. If you'd like to know about that automation and how I did it, leave me a comment down below. This helped me automate and turn my video creation process into an extremely smooth process. And all I need to do is drop this into DaVinci, remove the silence, maybe remove a couple of the mistakes, and it's heading up to YouTube. Let me know what you think about this new video style. Because, again, remember, your three tools, ChatGPT is the smartest, Google Gemini has the longest memory, and Claude is best at handling code. take a look at litsnippets.com. If you like it, feel free to go ahead and follow it. You can subscribe there and get a very beautiful, wonderful little email every day with a new book in there. And also with the Lit Snippets podcast, I'm going to focus on doing an entire author for one whole week or a period of time. Like, for example, we're going to do Dr. Seuss first. I'd love to see what our podcast hosts have to say about his work. But start simple with something on n8n. And most importantly, use ChatGPT to understand APIs. In order to get you started, I did a video on that. And that video, which helps break down what an API is, what a REST API is, what an HTTP call is, and how to connect your GPT to the outside world. That video, which teaches you how to do that, is on screen right now.